Namaste everyone. Welcome to this seminar series of Indic Studies Toronto. Our topic today is Hindu genocide and its significance today. We are going to trace the genocide of Hindus of several centuries. Our speaker is Aarti Agarwal. She is a marketeer, data scientist, and an economist, and an ardent student of Indic history. Her first book, Cownomics, was released in March of this year. She's also the founder of a project Ishitva, as you see on the screen. So welcome. We are going to have about 30 to 45 minutes of presentation and about 30 minutes of question and answer. So welcome Aarti ji, and please go ahead.
Thank you for inviting me to this webinar on this very important topic. So before I start speaking, I just wanted to make sure everybody can hear me and see the screen which is projected.
All well, Aarti ji. All looks good.
Okay, great. So the topic I want to talk about today is the historic genocide of Hindus and what significance it has today. So, somehow I feel like even our cognition of our history, the way we understand our history, the way we look at our history has somehow not taken in the full fact of how much Hindus have been persecuted historically. And this is a very important part of our history because, whenever you talk about the history of any culture, you have to take into account whatever were our, achievements, our glory and everything, but also our persecution, if we have been persecuted. And it so happens that Hindus have definitely been persecuted, not just for once or twice or whatever, not just in episodes, but an ongoing persecution. So just a heads up that because we're talking about historic crimes, there will be some disturbing images. So viewer discretion is advised. I've tried to avoid it as much as I can, but just because I want to actually talk about how terrible some of these crimes against humanity were, that's why some of these have been included in the presentation. So see, I'll try to give a comparative approach here, comparing with other cultures and stuff, just to make us understand how grossly uninformed we are about our own past. Now, our history is actually smeared with literally the blood and tears of Hindus. But we don't even know the names of these people. We don't even know what all places we have been persecuted, in what all manners we have been persecuted. Now, if you look, by contrast, if you look at Black history, for example, or if you look at the history of Jews, the Holocaust, or if you look at the history of some of the native cultures, they actually are very, forthright in talking about how much they have been persecuted. They will know exact incidents. They will know, how much, in what all ways they have been persecuted in the past. But somehow, in our case, even our education systems, even our society in general, even all the media, whether it is movies or books or news or whatever, in none of these places do these crimes against humanity figure. So see, it's not just a question of Hindus. When there is this kind of a persecution and genocide, it's a crime against humanity. Genocide is classified as under the category of crimes against humanity in international law. And it's why we need to study it. I'll come to that in the end of the presentation. But for the sake of understanding, first we need to understand that these kind of genocides happen. So I'm going to give a very quick summary. This is by no means exhaustive. I'm just giving figures just for us to understand the scale of the problem. Because many times even if we talk about these things, we don't actually have the numbers. So there's a very huge difference between 30 and 30 million, for example, right? Were 30 people killed or were 30 million people murdered? There's a huge difference. So that is why I just want to give a very quick summary and a comparative analysis of the extent of these crimes and just the fact that these crimes are so huge and so gross and we don't know about it is something to think about. So for example, just the period between 1000 to 1500 AD, just this period alone, 400 million Hindus were actually converted or murdered by Islamic rulers during this period. And this was a period of extremism. extremism, or whatever way you want to pronounce it. This was like there was extreme intolerance towards Hindus in their own land. So it has to be remembered that these people invaded our land and they actually persecuted us in our own homes. It's not that we went somewhere and then we got persecuted. It was our home. And this is not, again, it's not a figure which is pulled out of thin air. It is recounted by Farishta, who was a historian, describing the glory of the history of the Islamic Empire in India. So this is a figure which is cited by him in his very huge 4-volume book. Now, Akbar is generally thought of as a very tolerant ruler, right? Now, Akbar, as per his own records, again, from Akbarnama, we know that he murdered at least 30,000 Hindus and he took 5,000 Hindu women as sex slaves. So it's not that he was a very nice person and very tolerant person. Like, all we hear about him in our history books is just that it's just very nice things, right? But he actually enslaved, and his generals enslaved at least 500,000 Hindus. And these are just some of the figures we have. Now coming a little bit forward, I'm just talking about some of the main rulers. I'm not talking about all of them because it's going to take hours of time if I do that. But just some of the more popular ones. So Tipu Sultan, till a few years ago, we used to celebrate Tipu Sultan's birthday or something in Karnataka, which is a very big irony, considering that Tipu Sultan murdered at least 160,000 Hindus. And he enslaved at least 90,000 Hindus, and he destroyed many Hindu temples. And this was not just it. The methods he used, even to conquer Hindus or to defeat Hindus, were extremely sly and cunning. So I don't know how many of you have heard about this battle with the Kodavas. They defeated him at least 2-3 times, and then he went and attacked them at night when they were completely unprepared for a battle. Right. So these are some of the means they used. Now, if you think this is only some distant past, I want to sort of slowly keep moving forward to where we are now. This is the Mopla genocide from 1920. And you can see the figures again. So I don't want to go too much into the details of every genocide because, again, that'll take a lot of time. But you can go and read the details. It's there on the website. The website is hindugenocide.com. You can go and visit the blog and get the details of these if you really want to educate yourself. Right now, I'm only giving the numbers here just to give you a sense of the scale and how it is still continuing. So this is also history, by the way. This is still pre-independence history. So the Mopla genocide was actually described even in international newspapers, and even the British police and soldiers here, even they got scared seeing the level of the atrocities committed against Hindus. So there were like villages after villages where you could not see a single Hindu temple which was not vandalized or broken. You could not find a single Hindu. People had just left their homes. And so many were forced to just jump into a well. There are wells still there in those towns where Hindus just jumped because they did not want to be forcibly converted or raped or tortured in hideous ways. So these are some very, very gory aspects of our history, and maybe that's why people don't like talking about it. But we should know at least that this is how we were persecuted. Now, this is pre-independence, just before independence. This is the Great Calcutta killings. And the picture is actually a sight from the roads. This is not some special cremation ground or something. I'm really sorry to show this picture, but this was the site of the roads in Calcutta at that time. There were like so many dead bodies on just the road because people were murdered brutally, left, right, and center, and they were forcibly converted. If they did not, convert, they were killed, of course. And many people, of course, just fled to save their lives. This is the same here in Noakhali in Bengal. And you can again see the figures of exactly how many, 3.5 lakh people were converted forcibly. And these are not people who are willingly converting, who are unhappy with Hinduism or Dharma or something. These are forcibly converted. Then partition of India, we hear a lot about partition of India, but what people don't talk about is that although there was an exchange of population, but that exchange of population became an expunging of Hindu people from Pakistan. So although people were allowed supposedly to move across the new borderlines, but the Hindus who were there in Pakistan, they were actually forced out of Pakistan, and not just forced out of Pakistan, they were actually converted. They were forced out and converted and attacked and killed when they were actually leaving Pakistan. So we've written on this in a lot of detail. Again, you can check the blog. But the total number is roughly 7 million. We are talking in millions now, not even in hundreds, not even in thousands. It's in millions. And a figure this big is still not known throughout the world as a legitimate genocide of a certain group of people. Now, people say that, okay, there were attacks from both the sides, but the attacks were very, very, the thing is when Hindus were attacked and their women were raped and the children were murdered, they retaliated. And that is how there were losses on both sides. But even the figure is different. The number of losses sustained by Hindus and Sikhs were much more. And many people, in this number, they also include the number of people from India who went to Pakistan as the Muslims, right? But many of those people went voluntarily. They were not forced. So the number of people included on the other side does not include the forced conversion, does not include any torture, does not include all those types of atrocities which Hindus had to face when they were leaving Pakistan, because they were systematically killing people. This is 1971 Bangladesh war. We are still in history. We are still not in present time. Even this was 50 years ago. So this is a liberation war for Bangladesh, in which, again, you can see 2.4 million Hindus were murdered or converted forcibly again. And the worst aspect, again, of this particular war was also that, like, women were pulled out of their homes, Hindu women, targetedly Hindu women, and they were raped in their own homes by these Pakistani extremist soldiers. And of course, again, millions fled and they had to run to save their lives. So close to 8 million were displaced in this whole war. Now, we need to, again, when I'm giving these numbers, it's not because, I want to bore people with numbers, but we need to think about how such huge figures have not figured anywhere in the history of Hindus, have not figured anywhere in any, discussion, global discussions about our culture, our history, and, our historic persecution. When other historic crimes can be discussed, can be talked about, then why are we ourselves not discussing this? Of course, the international community, for them to discuss it, we ourselves first need to talk about it and be aware of it. Now, just to give a summary, now I'm not finished. I've just picked some of the important incidents from the past. This is by no means exhaustive because I ran out of time, so I could not include more actually. But then I also did not want to go on talking about just the incidents. This is a comparison of other crimes against humanity versus the persecution of Hindus. Now, in this figure, you can see the World War II, how many casualties it had. It was 85 million total. The total figure, which is estimated by all legitimate records. In this World War I, the number of casualties was 37 million. And the Holocaust, the complete Holocaust, was 18 million. So the Holocaust included the persecution of many ethnicities. The Jews were the ones who were most horribly persecuted, but they also persecuted many other, like the Poles, the Czechs, the Yugoslavs. So many other ethnicities were included in the Holocaust, which the total figure is 18 million. The Jewish genocide of the Jewish people during the Holocaust is 6 million. Now let us look at some of the figures of the persecution of Hindus. Sorry. Now the figure I gave before, which is the Islamic genocide, I have mentioned it as, meaning just the figure of the crimes against Hindus by extremist Islamic emperors from 1000 to 1500 AD alone. no, sorry, 1000 to whatever, 1700 AD. That is for 40 million, the total figure. The British genocide is all the famines and all the massacres which occurred during the reign or the rule of the British in India, because these were forced famines. Now, I missed it in the previous slides, but the famines which happened in India, and they were in a lot of these famines were in Bengal, in Orissa, in Bihar, in many of the states. So the Bengal famines are more famous, but there were famines in other states as well. And these famines alone add up to 85 million casualties. So this is a very, very sour aspect of our history, which just does not get talked about when we talk about imperialism, when we talk about colonization, when we talk about, so many aspects of, the imperial empires. This one particular figure just still does not get discussed. Yes, it is true that, the colonizers committed crimes in many countries against many ethnic ethnicities and against many native cultures. But just look at that figure, 85 million. It is comparable with the total number of casualties in just World War II. That is what I'm trying to point out here. Just look, I mean, of course, this happened toward, in a longish period, during longish period, but this is not by any means a figure which somebody can be okay with, no matter how much time it may have happened in. And of course, the partition of India itself is 7 million people either murdered or displaced. I mean, forcibly displaced, not voluntarily displaced. And that again is a bigger figure than the Holocaust of Jews alone. Now, of course, it's important to talk about the Jewish Holocaust, but the question is why are we not talking about this Holocaust of Hindus and Sikhs and other Sanatani cultures? So again, if you want to see some sort of a comparison between some of the other known genocides in the world and the genocide of Hindus. Now see, these are the Irish genocide, the Uhu genocide, Assyrian, Romani. All these are some of the commonly known genocides you can see in this chart. Now this total, all these genocides together add up to a little more than 2 million. Whereas just the crimes against Hindus of Mahmud Ghazni alone were 2 million. But you never see Mahmud Ghazni mentioned anywhere in the crimes against humanity or anywhere. It's not even, the word genocide is not even used anywhere, whereas genocide is a legitimate word as per international law to acknowledge some incident as a crime against humanity. Now, again, this is a comparative chart about the types of atrocities which happened in some of the commonly known genocides. Now, I've included the top 3 or 4: Jewish, Greek, Armenian, and the Polish genocide. And you can see what all crimes these genocides included: murder, rape, forced refugees, forced conversion, mob lynching, gas chambers, arson, starvation, cultural destruction, drowning, and slavery. And I can see the Y and N is yes and no. So this chart basically shows which genocide included what. So you can see the chart, and you can see that in the Hindu genocide, which now I'm referring to all of these historic crimes together, other than gas chambers, literally we have suffered every other type of atrocity, which did not happen in many of the other genocides. So again, this is not to disrespect anybody else's narrative or their cultural history, but it's just astounding that we somehow do not talk about this aspect of our history, whether it is in numbers or it is in the scale of the problem. This does not get any mention, any discussion. So now I come to the important question, that what is really the importance of knowing all these historic incidents and genocides. See, the importance is that, like I was mentioning earlier, that crimes against humanity are not something which happened only historically. So even all the Nuremberg Charter and all of these new laws which came up after World War II, all of these were put into place just so that when there are certain crimes against humanity again, we are able to check them and we are able to stop them from becoming so huge and so terrible that we have one more genocide like the Jewish genocide. That was the whole point of those laws that were put into place, right? Now, why otherwise would we need to put those laws into place? The whole purpose is that if we know history and if we actually understand the ideologies or the reasons or the methods in which people have been historically persecuted, if we learn that, we will actually be able to do something about our present and our future if we see those same things happening again. That is the purpose, that is the very purpose of studying history. History is not just for your interest, it is not just for a feel-good thing that, oh, I'm so knowledgeable now. No, the purpose of studying history itself is that you should know historically what was good about the past, what was bad about the past. And you should be able to do something and identify it when the same bad incidents happen again now in the present time. And you should be able to do something about it apart from just recognizing it. So, and because we have not been able to study our historical genocide of Hindus, as of today, I mean, if I have to ask any random person, a Hindu for that matter, like, what do you know how many people are getting persecuted today just for being Hindus? Do you know where all it is happening? Do you know the methods being used? Do you know how it is happening? Do you even know whether this is counted as a genocide or not in international legal language? People will not know the answer to these questions. And we should know the answer to these questions. Because the same history is going on repeating itself. Now, this is a very famous quote that those who do not study history or learn from history are condemned to repeat it. And we are becoming those people who are getting condemned to repeat our own history. Now, I did not talk about the Christian conversions in the slides, but there have been historic genocides against Hindus, even where Hindus were converted to Christianity, like the Portuguese Inquisition of Goa, and not just Goa, the whole Konkan region, basically. Goa is what we call it in the modern language. But that whole Konkani people genocide, essentially. So I don't have the numbers right now offhand because I'm sharing these slides, but historically Hindus have also been converted to Christianity. Even during the British period, the Anglican Church was also extremely active in India, and they set up institutions, not just churches. They set up educational institutions, they set up healthcare institutions. All of this infrastructure for converting a people into Christianity was set up way before, during the British presence in India in the 20th century. Some of it is even in the 19th century, actually. So all of this infrastructure, this whole methodology, the whole reasons, methods of converting Hindus was put into place during that era. And because we don't know about it, because we have never studied it, because most people are completely unaware of it, we do not even know that today, this is 2018, just a few years ago, just one missionary church converted 1 million Hindus in 1 year. I missed out 1 year in that slide, but you can add that bit. And they're converting people in all possible ways, through education, through healthcare, through all this sort of so-called humanitarian work. Like they give them some food, some water, something like that. And all of this is happening, in villages. It's happening in city level also, but in villages. And it's amazing that the methods they use today in 2018, 2020 are the same methods they used or they formulated in 1890. So It's literally more than 100 years, 120, 130 years of same methods of conversion, but we have not been able to do anything about it because we don't know it. We don't even know that this is happening right under our noses, literally. And I'm sure many of you may have heard of the Joshua Project. But the Joshua Project, just for those who don't know, the Joshua Project actually has a very good demographic summary and analytics of the whole of India down to district and tehsil level, and with level of difficulty of conversion, and what is their ethnicity, which culture do they belong to, what are the obstacles they face, what is the literacy, blah, blah, blah. So they have all possible details of our demography. So if you actually want that demography, you may not find it on government websites, but you will find it in Joshua Project. So, and this is 1997. So I just wanted to point out that this conversion is illegal. This is not a legal conversion. This is not people. It's not like 1 million people will suddenly become unhappy with the culture and decide to leave it. No, this is illegal conversion. Because when they give aid, when they give some sort of food or education or whatever, it is conditional that if you want this, you have to convert. It is not all free. Like nothing is free, right? There's no such thing as a free lunch. And that is exactly what happens in these conversions. And this is illegal, by the way, by law, it is illegal. Now in 1997, it is not even a question of just conversions. Now, in the state of Mizoram, it's a very small state in Northeast India. 32,000 Hindus were exiled and forced to flee in Mizoram by Mizo Christians. And even now in many of these Northeast states in India, like Mizoram, Nagaland, Christianity is the main religion. And there is absolutely no reason why it should be, because these states had their own very strong indigenous cultures. If you go to states like Sikkim, Assam, they have their own beautiful culture. But that culture has been completely destroyed, and now they're all Christians. They all go to church. There is no, there's no preservation of Hindu culture in the whole state. Not one village, not one town, the whole state. Imagine. These whole states have become Christian majority states in India by these kind of methods, illegal methods of conversion, forcing Hindus to exit the state. Either you convert or you leave. I mean, this is the same methods which the Portuguese also used against India, isn't it? The Portuguese placed so many restrictions on Hindus in India in the imposition of Konkani people that they had to either, leave that region to save their lives and to save their culture. So they had, if they wanted to practice as Hindus, they had to leave that place, or they were forced to convert, or they were persecuted for it, basically, they stayed back. Now, coming to some other scattered incidents, which some people may not have heard about. This is the Akshardham massacre, where a whole temple, now Akshardham is a very prominent temple. It's a very huge temple. And if you actually see, that temple has extremely articulate work. And the whole temple there was a bomb blast, and 34 Hindus were murdered, 80 were injured. And it took more than 10 or 12 years for them to just find the person, the criminal who carried out this massacre. This is the state of law in India. Such a huge massacre on a prominent site. It's like, this temple is flooded with visitors. And this place, so it's a Hindu temple, right? So targeting this temple means targeting Hindus. It's not just a question of a public security, blah, blah. It's a Hindu place of worship. If a synagogue is attacked, it's an attack on Jews. If a mosque is attacked, it's an attack on Muslims. If a church is attacked, and somehow even news coverage of these incidents today, this is, okay, not today, maybe 19 years ago, but relatively in the last, you can say the last 20 years, these type of incidents do not get recognized as attacks against Hindus, in spite of the fact that there is glaring evidence of it. And you can see the total number of, injuries and total number of murders and injuries is more than 100. The Godhra train massacre, I think many people have heard, because it comes in political controversies and things. This was in 2002. There were total number of 312 Hindus were murdered, including the actual burning of the train and the later riots that happened. Now, in this train, I just wanted to point out that this train bogies which were burnt contained Karsevaks who were returning from Ayodhya. So again, this was a targeted killing of Hindus. It's not that they just randomly burnt some train. And there were many incidents, there were many clues, a lot of evidence which points to it being a very planned attack. It's not that it was some random accident or something. Of course, you can read it in more detail. It's there in the website. Now I'm coming to the grand figure. This is the grand figure. Now just look at this figure and stare at it for a few minutes. This is the total number of reported crimes against Hindus since the beginning of time, whatever we have been able to count. This is a mind-boggling figure. It's more than 500 million crimes. And the number here is the number of people, not incident, number of people who are affected. Either rapes or murders or forcibly converted or forcibly expunged from their homes. So we have a database in which we have actually tried to tabulate and count all historic crimes against Hindus plus ongoing crimes against Hindus. And of course, it's not complete. Of course, it's not exhaustive because it's, we are a small number of people and the crimes, you can see how big the number already is. So it's absolutely a nightmare to find these crimes and evidence of these crimes, but we are doing whatever best we can. And this number itself deserves a mention somewhere. Of course, we have a website for it. It's called hindugenocide.com, but it deserves to be taken note of, not just by people like me, but people like the prime ministers of many countries, not just India. And this includes crimes against Hindus, not just Indians, Hindus. I wanted to specify that. In just the year 2020, this is the total figure of crimes against Hindus. Again, please stare at that figure for a little bit of time. It's more than 500 million, 0.7 million something. And this includes forced or illegal conversion of Hindus. So I don't want to go over all of these figures in a whole lot of detail. You can see this is the number of attacks on temples in 2020. That means at least 10 attacks per month. And again, this is not complete. And again, I want to keep on repeating, this is not complete. These are just reports we have been able to find in some news reports, some media article, because even when we see a lot of these crimes happening, I hear of these crimes happening. If people come and tell me or message me or something, there's no news report. So how do I add it to this? Tomorrow somebody will say you're making up numbers, because at least for 1 week, maybe that video will be available. After that, even that video will be removed from Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or whatever. And 1 year later, nobody will even remember that this happened. So these are just news reports and links which we have already found. This is just the number of conversions to Christianity this year, 2020, sorry, not this year. Just the number of conversions. Now, this is what I wanted to point out here, that when we start looking at such big numbers, sometimes we forget that these are not numbers. This was a person who is a victim, who has been made into a victim, who was either killed or kidnapped or raped or whatever. I don't want to keep repeating the same things. It's difficult even for me. But this is not just numbers. Sometimes we look at these numbers and we become completely insensitive to what we are even looking at. So these are all numbers, but as I've said, these are all numbers which only we have been able to verify and check, for which we have a legitimate report. And of course, the real numbers you can imagine are much bigger than this. So this is just, I wanted to share these slides for the purpose of reference, because I didn't want to just talk in the air, but I wanted to conclude by saying that if we don't study our history, then we are going to go on repeating it. What is happening in West Bengal right now, it is extremely nightmarish, because if you see the 1950 riots of West Bengal, If you see 1962, 1964 massacres of West Bengal, if you see 1971 massacres of West Bengal, if you see 1946 Great Calcutta killings or the Noakhali genocide, I can go on and on and on and on. It's the same pattern of riots and massacres and persecution, which is just going on repeating. And many people just do not want to talk about it. They do not want to even acknowledge it. And we need not just acknowledgement from Hindu people or other people, we need international recognition for these crimes against humanity. Whatever be your reason, you could be practicing any religion, you could be practicing anything you want, but there is never a good reason to go and kill somebody or rape somebody just for their ethnicity. That is never acceptable anywhere in any court of law. And that is why these crimes need to be addressed as such. When we call them just riots, just massacres, or just, some whatever, blah, 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 some incident, then we are actually deflecting attention from the real problems here. So I'm just going to stop sharing the slides because I think some people had a question. So what I just conclude with in one line, we need to learn our history, get all these genocides acknowledged as genocides. And this needs to be recognized, officially recorded as genocides. And we need to study the patterns of these genocides so that when these incidents are happening now, we can actually recognize even what is happening now as a genocide and take recursive action, corrective action towards them.
Everybody, first of all, I think I have one quick question. I have also seen your YouTube, I think, a couple of weeks back. See, whenever even Indian government has not recognized Hindu genocide as genocide, right? What we can say of the Western nations. So my first question is, are we progressing on that way that first Hindu genocide should be considered as a Hindu genocide? It should be legally considered as a genocide. And second question is, right now we have seen Armenia genocide has been recognized by the US government, right? So are we doing anything over here in US to do to consider the genocide for Hindus? Because it has been going for 1,000 years, right? Because we have to present them the artifacts and everything.
So do you want me to do everything?
No, I'm not doing. I'm just asking, do you have any information where?
No, nothing has been done. The short answer to what you're saying is nothing is happening, nothing has been done. I'm sorry to inform you that, but absolutely no progress on that. Can you go to the next question? See, my work is to create the kind of knowledge needed to get that recognition, but has that recognition been given so far? Have we made any progress on that front? The answer is no. What I can do on my capacity, I can't share in this presentation, but I am doing what I can in my capacity, if that makes you feel better.
Yes, thank you, G. Thank you for the presentation and thanks everyone for coming online. My question also is, while we're recording these crimes, is there also taken stock of the land which was stolen, the land which was demolished, their belongings being demolished, and their belongings being robbed, because that also makes Hindus refugees, they lose all their wealth and their family sustainment. And that is also not always coming to light. And how can we teach the world without crying that we need help? But, what suggestion or what thoughts should we teach the young generation going forward to make this acceptable, even for Indian Muslims to listen and say, this happened to your ancestors, to Pakistani Muslims, this happened to your ancestors, to Bangladeshi Hindus, this happened to your ancestors. Why are you doing this? Are you ashamed of your own ancestry? These hard questions. Do you know you are not willingly converted or following this religion or whatever? You are being forced. Have you ever thought about your ancestry? I mean, how can we make those regions, more acceptable to their ancestry. Thank you, G. Thanks.
Who is speaking? Sorry, I didn't get the name.
Ravish ji, I think was.
Yeah, just please mention your name before asking the question. So you asked several things in one go. One first thing you asked me was about the land thing, right? The land being taken and all. So the numbers you saw in the presentation were just the number of people, because human life is most important. But we do have, we are adding numbers and we are compiling statistics on the number of temples destroyed and cultural genocide. So these are two separate sections. I mean, temples destroyed is a part of cultural genocide, but the number of temples is getting recorded in a separate database. And all this is not published yet because we're always updating it. And honestly, I don't feel satisfied with publishing it yet because I feel like the number is not reflective of the total crime. So I'll publish it when I feel confident that this number is actually representative of the total number of temples which have been destroyed historically and right now. My challenge is that there's not enough information, there's not enough news reports to actually include these crimes which are happening. Land, I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about land belonging to Hindu temples here. So that has been included, not other types of land. That's a bit too generalized, and it's okay as a concept, but it's very difficult to find information on that. So that's not included. But yeah, the cultural genocide, we're definitely including incidents of any attacks on, say, Hindu culture, where you're not allowed to practice your culture for any reason. The second question you asked is, how do you make people more accepting? Well, first, Hindus have to accept it. That's always what I say. I mean, first, the majority of Hindus need to start accepting and start acknowledging and stop feeling ashamed about talking about our own historic persecution. See, Jews are able to take such a strong stand in the world for themselves. Now, I'm not talking about the current conflict, I'm talking about throughout history, just because they're not ashamed of talking about their historic persecution. But whenever Hindus start talking about their historic persecution, they get into all sorts of guilt trips and guilt cycles, and they get really apologetic about, oh, no, I'm not disrespecting your culture. Of course, we're not disrespecting any other culture. We're talking about our culture. We're talking about destruction of our culture. So, I mean, convincing other people is not really that difficult, or not even convincing. Making your point to other people is not that difficult if you yourself don't have any sort of, apologetic attitude towards it. That's what I believe.
Ravi ji, please go ahead.
Namaste, everyone. Thank you, Arti ji, for giving the presentation. So my name is Ravi. I'm from Scotland. I am an Indian historian here as well. Whilst we can disagree on assessment and things like that, I think what is clear from your presentation is that Hindu leaders have been ineffective and Hindu systems have been ineffective. A lot of these things could have been mitigated or avoided altogether. In particularly, we can reference Muhammad Ghazni. I was hoping you could speak to your assessment on why Hindu leaders are ineffective or can't seem to learn from their past mistakes.
So I think that's what the whole presentation was all about. And I don't believe the Hindu leaders were ineffective at that time. Actually, Hindus have survived. And if you actually read history, you've only seen like a 30-minute presentation right now. I have been studying it through n number of books for the last 3-4 years. If you actually read history, you will realize that we have survived only because of sacrifices and courage of Hindu leaders. So no, I'm not saying that Hindu leaders were ineffective. That's the conclusion you came to. That's not my point here. Especially historics. Even if you see the history of Hindus during the Islamic wars or during the later British, atrocities against Hindus, the very fact that we survived, that there are huge countries in the whole continent called Africa where their culture does not exist anymore. There are huge colonies in huge parts of Asia where their culture does not exist anymore. So now my conclusion is not that Hindu leaders were ineffective. My conclusion is that Hindu leaders now are ineffective post-independence. Because at that time we were under a certain kind of regime. Now we are supposedly free. Now we are supposedly have our own laws and our own land and our own, whatever system. So we need to, my whole presentation was to explain that all this has happened in history and we need to learn from it to check things now. It's very difficult to say what people in the time of Mahmud Ghazni should have done, since we don't have that kind of hindsight. But what we can say, what we need to do now. Forget about learning from history in 1500 AD and 1700 AD. I think my attention of the whole presentation was now. It's very easy to comment on what people in 1500 AD should have done, but it's very difficult to actually get your act together and learn what we need to learn from history and do what we need to do in 2021 AD. My focus is learning from our history and doing what we need to do now, not what people in 1500 or 1700 or 1300 AD should have done. It's very easy to say they should have done this when we ourselves are not able to do anything now. We're not even able to call it a genocide now. It's very easy to say, oh, they should have fought better, they should have been more ferocious, they should have done this. Yeah, all very nice arguments. I hear these arguments all the time. But today, the people, there are at least more than 100 people who are on this presentation. So many people don't even want to call it a genocide. Who are we to comment on what those people should have done in 1700 AD? So I'm sorry to disagree with you, but this is what I believe, and this is the purpose of my talk. Learn from history to do something now, at least, not to point fingers at whatever Hindu leaders and kings and sadhus should have done this. Okay, next question.
Seema ji, please go ahead.
Yeah, hello. My name is Seema, and I'm from Bangalore. And I want to ask you, Aarti ma'am, that what the things have been gone in the recent few days back in Bengal. So can you comment on this, that we have sent such a strong Hindu leaders in the Sansad, and then he is doing nothing, and everyone has commented. We have tweeted a lot. It was flooded with the tweets, and he became inactive. So how we can save ourselves?
It's a very complicated question. I don't have a direct answer for it, but I think the Hindus need to take their own lives into their own hands. I think we need to learn again from history and not depend on the government. As long as we keep believing that the government is pro-Hindu and they're going to save us, they're going to protect us, we don't have a future. I'm sorry to say this, but if you keep waiting for the government to save you and to recognize things for you and to do things for you, it's hopeless. Whether you call it, I don't even want to get into that silly political Congress versus BJP kind of a discussion. You can have that discussion on your own time, but my whole point right now is that no government is doing anything. So we need to stop waiting for the government, and we need to do what we need to do right now on our own. That's what I'm trying to say. The system is not in favor of Hindus. The law is not favoring Hindus. Implementation of law is not. There are laws. I mean, murder and rape are against the law, right? But does the legal system of India work? How many years, 10, 15 years it takes to just hang one terrorist? One terrorist, to hang one terrorist, we take 10, 20 years. So what are you talking about? Riots and these small scale massacres and these kind of rapes? It's hopeless. There's no point in depending on the law. So we need to, of course, take our own, use our own resources and figure out ways of defending our own selves. And I don't want to comment on political leaders because that's not what I'm here for. I gave my opinion. I think I made my own point, I think, very clear. Okay, next question.
Reality Spaces, Kenya, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
What's your name?
Aarti, it was a wonderful.
What's your name?
My name is Anita Karambalkar. My name is Anita. Yeah, can I come to my question, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, ma'am, Aarti, it was a wonderful presentation. In fact, an eye-opener. Unfortunately, history has really not educated us on our facts. But coming to the solution part, especially after this West Bengal incident that has happened, where again the media has not covered it. From the expertise that you have and from the international background that that you have, is it possible that across with all these genocides that are happening currently, forget about the past figures, the current things, is it possible that, we could echo the concept that declaring India as a Hindu Rashtra would be one solution to it? Putting an end to this concept of secularism, the second solution to it. Third is trying, wherein all the global NRIs or the global Hindus would get together and put a plea in the United Nations, like how every small issue is happening in Kashmir was cried right from the parliaments in the US to the United Nations. We too ourselves, with such figures that you have and with the data that you have, could go to the international court and say it's now or never, wherein, whatever, in various geographical areas, we find the discovery of the National Geography goes digging to find out the olden culture and are out here now to destroy the ethnic culture which is already existing. This is the oldest culture.
So what is the
can you
question?
give us
Can
some-
you just please outline your one-line question for me?
Yeah, the one-line question would be, would this be the right road map ahead? Can we follow a particular this thing where we could go to the court, for the international court or the United Nations?
Yes, that is what I think I have. I don't know if I was clear in presentation, but my whole purpose was that the international court and international human rights organizations need to recognize historic and ongoing crimes against Hindus as genocides and crimes against humanity. That's a technical term in the international court. And we need to canvass for that. Yes. The next question. Are there any more questions?
Yes, Namaste Aarti ji. My name is Gaurav. I am
Yes.
from Gurgaon, India. So my question, am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
So my question is, so like we see in the Muslims, they are single-handedly moving in the same direction with lot of similar acts. So how can we bring, as an individual, what could a person or me do? Because whenever I discuss with others, so there is generally different thoughts and we are again contradicting each other. So I don't find what would work as a single idea or something in the Hindu psyche which will unite and then maybe then is stronger. Then I think other things like politics, etc., will fall in place. So my question is, can you share some ideas or a thought? What thoughts in normal our discussions we could propose which probably will unite Hindus?
Hindus are already kind of, Hindus don't need to be united. They need to be awakened. That's what I always say. If they get awakened, they will automatically get united. Uniting people is like lip service. It's like, putting a band-aid on a wound. You can't put band-aids on wounds which are so deep. Hindus need to be awakened, and sometimes that awakening may be a bit rude. The Delhi riots, which happened in December 2020, woke up many Hindus when they saw people, when they saw roads blocked, when they saw furniture and houses being burned, when they saw vehicles being burned, they woke up. So sometimes the awakening is a bit rude. But when Hindus realize this is our history and this is happening now, they will wake up. That's what I believe in, if you want to know my perspective. Hindus need to be given facts and figures about both history and the present time. And see, Hindus who have woken up and who realize these atrocities are happening, who realize we are not one, but many forces attacking us, they're already united. We may have differences about one or two social aspects, this, that is not so important. Whoever has actually understood history and who has understood what is happening now, they are united. I don't know why people keep asking Hindus need to be united. I don't think Hindus need to be united. I think Hindus need to be woken up. It's the people who are sleeping or pretending to be sleeping who are the problem. The others are not really a problem. I don't see that unity as a problem. Next question.
Namaste Aarti ji. I am Harish from Mumbai, India.
Namaste.
Any religion flourish when it gets Rajyashray, that is, the active support from the rulers, leaders of during that time. For example, Buddhism in India flourished during the time of Samrat Ashok. How can how to get that support in current time? Because this could be one
Demand it.
solution.
Demand it. Why are Hindus always trying to, why are all political proponents always asking Hindus to do something? Hindus should also be asking their leaders to do something. Demand a Hindu state. Finished. Why are Hindus not demanding a Hindu state from the governments?
Thank you.
Any other, are there still more questions?
Yeah, there's plenty of questions. Divya ji,
Just
please
1
go ahead.
minute. I just wanted to share one thing because this is also a question which people ask me. Let me just share the screen once. I just wanted to give a summary. Sorry, wait, not this. Yeah, so some people wanted to contribute to this work, this compilation work. So if you want to do that, I'm just projecting the link on the screen. This is the first link is for the non-profit foundation, under which Hindu Genocide Project falls. But if you're from outside India and you don't think you can contribute because we don't have FCRA. So I'm also working on a book which counters all these false narratives against our history. And one of those, the starting one is the book on Aurangzeb, which was written by Audrey Truschke. Some of you may be aware of it. And of course, she has tried to whitewash the whole genocide against Hindus by Aurangzeb. So I'm working on a book which actually details, with complete facts and complete references on how, she is completely false and what is the real history we need to know. So if you want to contribute to that fundraiser, you can contribute to either of these two bottom links. So I just wanted to point this. I'll put this in the chat if you want. And because some people may want to leave the call, so that's why I wanted to just share this once. So thanks to those who had asked me. Some people were DMing me, so I wanted to share this. Okay, we can go to the next question.
Divya ji, please go.
Yes, Aarti ji, namaste and very humble namaskar to everyone. So I'm based in USA, Aarti ji. More than a question, it will be a comment as well. That a lot of people are asking that what we can do. So I just wanted to let you know that we when the Bengal genocide started to happen, we had brainstorming sessions with the NRI and NRI Bengali NRIs, Aprabhashi Bharatiya, and we started with the global protest. We started writing to PMO, HM, Home Ministry, and we also started writing to a lot of so-called human right organizations like UN, but what I heard is that since there is no Hindu lobby sitting in all these human right foundations, so that becomes really difficult that we cannot set up our narrative there. So what I really think that whosoever is out of India, we need to reach out to these organizations, top leadership, and can have our presence, or the right wingers or so-called dharmic people there. So also in the politics of the world, we need to have our faces and our presence there. On that note, Aarti ji, I wanted to ask you that what the NRIs or what collaboration can you make with NRIs here in United States, Canada, and everywhere else? And I'm also working on many initiatives. I would like people to join me. We always need people. We all can collaborate. There are so many projects going on. Every project needs people.
Sir, I didn't get your name. I was calling to find your name. Could you please repeat your name? Is she still on?
She's Divya Jain from USA.
Okay. I didn't fully understand the question. I think you wanted to know that how we can collaborate. Well, you can actually contact me on my email if there is something specific you have in mind. So I have a non-profit organization in India, and I'm happy to collaborate with people within or outside India who want to work on anything we are working on, or who want to. The main thing I right now require, at least in my work, is people You're not muted, Divya Jain, right?
I just got unmuted, Aarti. So basically, we are working on many initiatives. Like I'm working on Sanatan Media Network, which will be able to raise fund for the ground workers in India. So it's like channelizing the media channels or the right-wing media along with the ground workers and donors from the North America. And also we are trying to set up a right-wing TV channel, or eventually a TV channel starting with a YouTube channel. We keep on whenever things like casteism or Hinduphobia is coming up. So I'm working with HAF and Kona and Hindu Speakers Bureau, HSB, here in United States. So there are many initiatives. So what I'm trying to say is, whenever people have such questions that where we can collaborate, so what I want to tell them is that there are already a lot of organizations like you yourself are working. I'm working here. There are many people who are working, and I also was looking forward to collaborate with you personally. So because
So just in the interest of time, I think we understood. So I've just put my email in the chat. You can contact me over chat, and you can let me know what you have in mind, or we can explore whatever way you want to collaborate. And this is for other people also. If there is something specifically, I mean, a lot of times people just come to me and they say, I want to collaborate. So I don't know what you want to collaborate about, because I'm very clear about what we are doing and what we are not doing, what we need and what is not exactly in our ambit. So that's why I've made it quite clear what all I'm working on, especially as far as crimes against Hindus is concerned. We also have other projects as a part of this nonprofit foundation. So if you want to know more about it, you can email me, or if you specifically want to help me with something or collaborate on something, you can reach me on that email.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello?
Any other questions, or are we
Hello?
done?
Vijay Kumar ji will, Vijay Kumar ji,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Vijay Kumar Kamar from Bangalore. And we, as a team of around 65 friends working in these rural areas to stop this conversions and other things. Whatever the genocide you're talking about, all these things, we are already started in the rural areas and the hilly areas. From 4 to 5 years, we are working on it, and we have collected data, and we want to contact the UN for this to highlight the matters. How can you help us in this matter? This is what I wanted to. I want a help from your side to reach UN to highlight this problem.
Sorry, I didn't understand. What did you want?
Yeah, we are working on the conversion
I
problem.
understood that. Just the last sentence. Could you just repeat the last sentence?
we want to reach United Nations to highlight.
So yeah, can you just contact me on the email, please? I'll need the data and statistics, whatever you have. We'll write on it and we'll document it properly. Because I think a lot of people work very hard, but they have not been able to put together a documentation. And the Hindu Genocide Project is not about any one person or even one organization. It's actually supposed to bring together the data for all Hindus all over the world. So if anybody is collecting any data about crimes in some region or conversions in some region, please do share with us. We'll not take ownership for the data. We'll cite all the sources or whatever, whichever way you want to get credited for the data. We just want to document it, and we want to put it together in the whole database of crimes against Hindus. So many people, get sidetracked. Oh, this is your data, my data. This is not my data. I'm just putting together data from all possible sources, basically. So yeah, please share the data, and we'll document it, and we'll, make it a part of the whole thing.
Sheetalji, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank you, Aarti, for documenting all this information. It was very important. I want to ask you that what I feel is that to do whatever everyone has suggested, the main thing is we have to make Hindus aware about all this information. If I talk personally, I have seen on YouTube.
Sheetal, can you please just summarize your question? Because otherwise this will become a long discussion. I've been talking for 2 hours. So can you just tell me only the question right now?
Okay. I want to ask this, that how can I'm asking for myself. I want to educate myself on this matter properly, into the depth, because there are on YouTube, there are various Islamic scholars, they say that these figures are exaggerated. To aware people around me, to make people aware around me on these issues, I want to educate myself first properly. So is the website enough to do this? Should I go through the website and
Yes,
that would be
please
enough?
go through
Or
the website, because a lot of things which people talk about, they're already there on the website. So even the historic numbers, and we are also going to keep updating the website a bit more regularly now. We were stuck because of some reason, but the next few 3-6 months, we'll upgrade it a lot more, because there's a lot of data and information which I have not published yet. So that will go on the website. But even what is there on the website is quite, it's very factual. It's not stories. It's very, very factual, and we have given all the references for it. So even if you first read that, and then if you feel like something is missing, you can come back to me with it, that, okay, this is something which is not there on your website. So what is the actual reality about it or whatever. But at least go through the website first. It's hindugenocide.com/blog. You can go through the blog. First, the homepage just gives a quick summary of total numbers. And people are always going to say, oh, this is fake, that is false, as if everything they are saying is like, God sent or something. So we need to stop worrying about convincing these people who keep saying it is fake. As long as we have proper legitimate references and we know we are giving proper information, there's always going to be people who say it's fake. We can't do anything about those people because they're not interested in facts. So I'm not trying to tell you how to convince them, but I'm just saying that you should know what is the real fact and where it is coming from. Okay, there's still so many questions. Oh my God. I'm seeing so many people raising their hands.
Shashank ji.
Yeah. Hello, Ji. So my question was about what is the solution for what I call the intellectual genocide of Hindus? Like, I myself keep posting about a lot of stuff on Instagram and other social media about genocides and other violences committed on Hindus. So most of the friends and viewers I have are Hindus, and they completely ignore that, but yet they stand for Palestine or something that's happening at least a continent away from them. So what is the solution for this ignorance? Like, day by day, my brain keeps draining. Like, the whole mental health goes into dustbins. Like, I keep thinking about this again and again and again, and nobody seems to give an eye on it. Like, hardly even 2 or 3 people don't even feel to raise this issue outside or feel ashamed to do this outside.
So if people don't want to learn, you can't do anything. You can only wake up somebody who wants to wake up. You can't wake up somebody who doesn't want to be woken up. But having said that, many people may not want to talk about it socially, or may not want to start posting on social media about it. People have their own reasons for that. But a lot of times people just read what you're saying, and they do at least get to see the other side of the narrative. So I would just ask you to not get discouraged. Because if you're talking facts and figures, you're talking about actual proper references. See, in my opinion, the problem is not that we are not putting facts and figures. The problem is we just start creating some sort of outrage, some sort of social media campaign without any sense of what is the real fact, where are the numbers coming from. So those type of things actually work against us. That's why in this project, I have not bloated or exaggerated any figure. Even where we have taken estimates, we have taken very conservative estimates. This is the minimum number who were killed. It must have been more than that, but I'm not exaggerating it. So as long as we are honest in our work, at some point people will see that, yeah, you're giving facts. So what's the problem? So don't expect everybody to become a social media hero or warrior like you. That is what I would say, because that is not how everybody is wired. Not everybody wants to use social media like that. People have their own reasons. So you don't even want to judge them. Many people do have their own problems. They work in some places. They don't want to get fired. They don't want to get whatever. So, I won't comment on that. But I'm just saying that just what people post on social media alone is not the thing. It's not the thing. That's what I'm trying to say. There are many people who are very silent on social media, but they read what other people post and they matter too. So just don't go by just numbers. These are people. Even if you have been able to give the right information to 3 people, 4 people, even it's not it's not a small number. That's all I'll say. Don't get discouraged. Just stand your ground.
Atul ji,
Thanks.
please go ahead.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah,
Yes,
please go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening. Thanks. I am Atul Gandhi from Mumbai. There is a suggestion or maybe a suggestion or the things. Can we to awaken the Hindus? Can we show our rishis and gurus achievements? That could be the point to again bring back the self-respect and these things. It goes to bring the Hindus together. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is not something you need to ask me. This is something you can anyways do. This is not something which requires anything from my end. Like, I mean, we already know that our gurus and our rishis were great in more ways than we can count. So that's something we should anyways be doing, actually.
Suresh ji, please go ahead.
Namaskar ji. Just a comment to make. We all have $1 million idea. We also know what needs doing. The problem is that we expect someone else to do it. So my suggestion to all my fellow Hindus here is this. Don't expect, like Aarti ji said, government or other people or world organization to do anything. This is something you will have to do because this is our own battle. Best thing is do what you can, wherever you can. And I'm absolutely convinced that wherever you are, there is always something you can do for Hindu cause. If you take that responsibility on our own rather than expect someone else to do it, I think we might get somewhere. Thank you. Namaskar.
Vaishali ji, please go ahead.
Namaskar, Arti. Eye-opening talk. I am from Calgary, Alberta, here in Canada. And I have one very one-pointed question. And I totally agree with all the questions and suggestions what you have given and what our fellow listeners have given.
Your
My
voice is
question
not
is,
coming very
We
clear.
cannot hear you.
Yeah.
oh, now is it better? Is it better
Not
now?
really. Maybe you can also type the question. I'll just answer it if you can also type it because I can't hear you properly.
Okay, while I'm typing, you can go ahead and take another question. Is that okay?
Yes. Can you go to the next question? I'll answer it
Ankur
once she
ji,
types it.
please go ahead. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, sorry for the disturbance at my end. I just wanted to know these figures of the Akbar and Tipu genocide. Could they be considered as confirmed figure or like authentic sources? That was one
Do
thing
you
because
think I'm
whenever
very free? Do you think I have nothing better to do in life than to put up some random figures and sit and talk here for 2 hours? I have mentioned on the slide, by the way, for your reference, that the figures for Akbar are taken from Akbarnama, and the figures for Tipu Sultan are again taken from historical records. So yes, they are confirmed figures.
Karthik ji, please go ahead.
Yeah, Aarti madam, it was really very awakening, and as you had mentioned some time back that we need to awaken the Hindus. So on that note, my question is it possible to, since this meeting is already recorded, so is it possible to send the record to everybody? So what we will do is we will share that with our fellow, people.
I think
Thank
it'll be uploaded on YouTube and Facebook everywhere, right? Sameer ji can confirm.
Yeah, it'll
You
be
can
on the
share
Index
it.
Studies Toronto YouTube channel. So you can take it from there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And we
Aarti
also
ji,
update, sorry, I just wanted to add that there's a YouTube channel for my nonprofit also. So we upload videos now and then on other Hindu aspects of the Hindu genocide. So if you want, you can share those as well. Yes, Sameer, you were saying something?
if you can answer Divya ji, the question she was typing. I don't know if she has typed it. Otherwise, we are almost running out of time. It's about more than 70-80 minutes. I think we can close our session now.
Okay, great.
So
So-
thank you, everyone. You can continue. Please continue.
I'm just trying to read the question. I think somebody has typed the question. Just 1 minute. I just wanted to make sure I saw. Is there any question which I have not answered? Please don't DM me the question right now because I'm not seeing my messages.
Yeah,
Just type it in the chat.
They're
Yeah.
mostly they're repeat questions, and
Okay,
I think
sure.
we have run out. We are almost at the end of our time, so they can email you any further questions.
Yes.
Thank you, Artiji. Thank you for hosting this wonderful session, and it was quite eye-opening. And we'll be presenting the recording on YouTube, our YouTube channel, Indic Studies Toronto. Please go there and subscribe. And dhanyavad everyone for attending this wonderful session. And thank you, Artiji.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it was really nice to see so many people here actively engaging and listening. And if there is any question which is unanswered or something, you can DM me or I put my email. You can reach me on my email. Some people are messaging about collaboration and things. You can reach me on my email. And you can find me on social media. I'm on almost every social media. So if there are still any legitimate questions, I can answer in some other like live Twitter spaces or Clubhouse or something like that. So thank you so much for engaging in this discussion and namaskar.